all I can do, I just keep thinking of examples. I could do this all fucking day. Do people hate Twilight because it's bad? Or do people hate Twilight because women like it and people don't like women? Do people hate rap music because they actually think it's bad, or do people hate rap music because they feel like black people like it, and so it's code for not liking? It's like a socially if you said I don't like black people, people would that's just crazy racist. But there are lots of people who'd be like, oh, I hate that rap music. Is it about do they actually hate the music, or do they hate the people that like the music? Here's a classic example. Do you ever notice how teenagers tend to like music that their parents dislike? Now, most people will tell you that's just natural. That's how life is. Whatever. Young people, things change. Um, what Bourdieu would suggest is this. The reason teenagers like music that their parents don't like is because their parents don't like it. One of the things teenagers are doing is they are disaffiliating with their parents. They're saying, I'm not just like you, I'm doing my own thing. Well, how do you demonstrate that you're doing your own thing? By liking something that your parents hate. Now, are teenagers pretending to like the music they like? No, they actually like it. But the tricky thing is, Pierre Bourdieu would say, the reason they like it is because their parents don't like it. Teenagers are disaffiliating from family, right? I mean, little kids are like, oh, mommy's my favorite person, daddy's my favorite person. But when you get to be like 14, you're like, ugh, I hate these people. Because you're coming up with your own sense of self, which means you have to show how you're different from your parents, different from your family. And so you latch onto music that they hate because they hate it. If they liked your favorite music, you probably would have to switch over to something else to like. Um, okay, cool. All right, so let's keep going with this. So let's talk about the thing I ended the last video with, because it's really interesting. On this television show, the kid says, I don't care what people think of me. And the dad says, that's what you want people to think of you. So he says, I don't care what people think. And the dad is like, that attitude of not caring, that is what you say to people, which means you do care what people think, because you just said that sentence out loud, which means you want other people to hear it, which means you want them to think you're a person that doesn't care. The problem with this raises a very disturbing issue with Bourdieu, which is that there's no way to escape his clutches. If you want to declare the theory wrong, it's very, very difficult to do. Cool is a tough word to define. It's very, very hard. We know what cool is. Oh, that's really cool. That guy's cool. It's very hard to define what makes something cool or not. It changes from decade to decade what's cool, and something that was cool can suddenly become very uncool, and then it can become cool again. In the film class, one of my favorite directors likes to use really goofy, old-fashioned music in his movies, but he uses them in really weird scenes, and so something that used to be cool and then became uncool, when he gets a hold of it, becomes cool again, because he uses an old pop song in a disturbing scene. Take the film class. It'll be fun. If it runs, I hope to God. I want to be back in the classroom. I'm losing my fucking mind out here. So cool is hard to define. But one way to define cool is that you don't care what other people think. Cool people do their own thing. They don't care what's popular. They just do what they like. They don't care about what other people are doing. They go their own way. Well, you see the problem with that? Because what Pierre Bourdieu would say is that what makes them cool, they don't care what other people think. But when people dress really differently, or they make different weird kind of music, and you're like, oh, this is really cool, this doesn't sound like anything else, they're letting you know they're not like anybody else. They're disaffiliating with all of your groups. It's like advertising to everyone, I don't care what you think of me. But if you're telling everybody you don't care what they think of you, obviously you do care. You want them to think you don't care. And you're going your own way, and you're doing your own thing. And so Pierre Bourdieu would point out that that this is essentially, that here's the tricky part. That cool means you don't care what other people think. So that you fall into the trap again of you're doing it to advertise to other people. Let's talk about the tricky thing of when people are deliberately, on purpose, uncool. Chance the Rapper has an outfit that he wears that is a white overalls. It looks fucking stupid. It looks really stupid. If I came to school dressed like that, you guys would lose your fucking mind laughing at how fucking dumb I looked in white overalls. But here's the thing. When he wears it, it looks fucking cool. He looks great in white overalls. It's a fucking cool outfit. He looks fucking great. And he's wearing it to like an award ceremony where people are in like suits and ties, and he's dressed in like white overalls with a white ball cap. And on its own, like if I saw that outfit in a store, I would think that's a fucking stupid outfit. But he looks cool in it. Well, why? Because he's cool. He's done all kinds of cool things. So when he does something that's uncool, it doesn't hurt him because he's so cool. He can afford to put on a dorky outfit and he may lose some cool points. But paradoxically, the fact that he's choosing to dress differently than everybody else, it's like advertising how cool he is. He's like saying, I'm so cool, I can get away with wearing a dorky outfit and I'm still cool. It's a tricky thing. Michael Jordan, the basketball player, not Michael B. Jordan from Black Panther, but Michael Jordan, the basketball player, for a while had a Hitler mustache. You can look it up. He had like a little mustache just like here. It's a very bad look. I would never fucking wear a mustache like that because I would look like Hitler. But because he's a black guy and quite famous, he can wear that and no one's going to think he has anything to do with Hitler. Because he's obviously he's not a Nazi. He's so cool, he can get away with something uncool. And it really just emphasizes how cool he is to people. And he may say, I don't care what people think about me. But when you do something deliberately on purpose uncool, it sort of becomes cool again, because it's advertising you don't care and not caring what other people think is cool. Except, of course, you do care what other people think because you're doing this for them. They're seeing it. This is an incredibly frustrating theory of art. That art essentially is learning about art is a form of power that gets you into groups. It's a type of self-definition that tells you what groups you are a member of and what groups you are not a member of. And it means that art, I thought what mattered about Shakespeare was the words on the page, like Brooks. Because remember, Brooks said, what matters is you pay attention to what the words on the page do. But for something like Bourdieu, what matters about Shakespeare is that other people have heard of him. And that when I carry a Shakespeare book around, I'm advertising myself as a certain kind of person. One of my friends, for example, I went to meet them at a coffee shop and I brought a Shakespeare book. And they were like, were you planning on reading during lunch with me? And I was like, no. But I carry the book around because I want people to know I'm the kind of person that likes Shakespeare. And I said, look at you. You're wearing a shirt with a sports team on it. You wore that shirt because you want people to know that you're a sports guy. And I carried this Shakespeare book because I want people to know that I am an old-fashioned person who likes old poetry. But it's depressing because notice it has nothing to do with the actual poems. It has everything to do with what people think about Shakespeare or what people think about different works of art. You say don't judge a book by its cover, but Pierre Bourdieu thinks that people are judging you by the covers of the books you're carrying around. It associates you with groups. And it's an extremely depressing way to look at art because as a person who studies what's inside the books, it seems incredibly sad to think that the main thing they're for is a kind of advertisement on the outside. But also, I got to admit, Bourdieu's got some good points. My wife went to a conference in Europe, and I went over there, and the fact that I was able to quote poetry at dinner, people were fucking impressed with that shit. They all really liked me. It's like the poetry. They were like, wow, they were like, oh, I know that poem, and then they were talking about the poem, and it was like, I don't know. It was like they were. I was like in their group immediately. It gave me a kind of power at dinner because the people at dinner also knew about the same books I did, and I was able to be like a cool dinner companion. Put me in another zone, and I'm fucking terrible. Put me at a sports game, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and I can't function in that group. All right, one more video coming.